My wife planned to destroy me during our daughter's wedding. What she didn't know was, I already knew everything. And I turned the entire day into a trap she couldn't escape. The gleaming silver Bentley came to a smooth halt in front of St. Augustine's Cathedral, its chrome finish catching the morning sunlight like a mirror. As the rear door swung open, Gregory Hale emerged with a composed elegance, brushing an invisible crease from his impeccably tailored navy Armani suit. At 54, Gregory's salt and pepper hair and sharp, ice-blue eyes gave him the commanding presence of a man used to control, an image he had honed over a 25-year career as one of the nation's most formidable criminal prosecutors. But behind that refined exterior, very few knew the shadows he carried, the truths he kept buried beneath layers of polished success. "Are we set?" he asked in a quiet, deliberate tone, barely glancing at the driver. "All systems are live, sir. Security is fully in place," the driver responded without hesitation. He was a former Special Forces operative who had stood by Gregory's side for years, both in silence and in danger. Gregory gave a small nod and turned toward the cathedral doors. Today wasn't just any day, it was his daughter Emma's wedding. Regardless of recent turmoil, he hadn't cut a single corner. The cathedral was a picture of opulence, decked out in sweeping arrangements of white lilies and roses that gave the whole space a serene, almost surreal glow. The pews were lined with the power players of society, judges, high-profile attorneys, seasoned politicians and CEOs, all people Gregory had either prosecuted, defended, or played political chess with throughout his career. But his thoughts refused to stay in the present. They kept pulling him back to that day 3 months ago when he first uncovered the deception. It wasn't just the affair that tore at him, it was the scale of the betrayal. What truly gutted him wasn't catching his wife Margaret in a moment of weakness. It was realizing she had been strategically plotting behind his back, in concert with her lover, Dr. Carter Langston, the city's most celebrated neurosurgeon. As a waiter glided past offering champagne, Gregory reached out, accepting a glass with a firm yet distracted hand. His gaze swept across the room and landed on Margaret. Even now, at 48, she looked effortlessly stunning. Her auburn hair was pinned up in a classic twist, and her emerald green gown hugged her frame with a quiet sophistication that turned heads. They had shared 26 years together. He used to believe they knew each other inside and out. But standing there, watching her from a distance, he realized how wrong he had been. From across the vast hall, Dr. Carter Langston chatted animatedly with the mayor, that well-rehearsed charm of his dialed up to perfection. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Gregory caught him mid-sentence, and in that instant Carter's polished composure wavered, a flicker of discomfort flashing across his features, before he quickly returned to schmoozing as though nothing had happened. "Dad!" A soft voice drew his attention, and there she was, Emma, standing beside him in her ivory wedding gown, absolutely glowing. At 24, she was the single person in the world who'd ever had his unconditional love. His expression, usually carved from stone, melted just a little. "You look stunning," he said, his voice warm, almost unfamiliar in its gentleness. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone edged with nerves. "Somewhere quiet?" They slipped away into a nearby antechamber, away from the grandeur and whispers, where Emma immediately began wringing her hands, her anxiety impossible to hide. "Dad. I know," she blurted out. Gregory's face remained unreadable. "Know what exactly?" "About Mom. And Carter. And what they've been trying to pull behind your back." Tears brimmed in her eyes, barely held at bay. "They went to Travis 2 months ago." Gregory felt his jaw clench, the movement almost invisible. Travis Bennett, Emma's fiancé, was a rising star in the district attorney's office, a department where Gregory's name still carried undeniable weight. "They wanted him to help expose you. At the reception, no less," she continued, voice trembling. "They claim they've uncovered something, records of offshore accounts, ties to the Kazarov syndicate." Gregory's stomach turned, though he didn't show it. "Carter's brother is with the FBI. They've been putting this case together for a while now," Emma said, barely able to get the words out. "Travis told me everything last night." Gregory took her trembling hands in his, grounding her with a steady grip. For 2 decades, he had walked a dangerous line, prosecuting certain criminals while quietly shielding others who bolstered his private network. His link to the Kazarovs was his best-kept secret, one that had afforded him power and fortune far beyond the reach of any courtroom. "What did Travis say exactly?" he asked, his voice calm in that eerie way that masked thunder beneath the surface. "He's with me," Emma whispered. "With us. He sees through it. He knows this isn't about justice, it's about leverage. Carter wants your connections. Mom wants your assets before she files for divorce. Gregory slowly nodded, processing it all with practiced restraint. Does Travis understand what happens next? He asked. Emma's gaze locked onto his. In her eyes was a resolve that mirrored his own, unyielding, forged in fire. That's why we moved everything ahead of schedule, Emma whispered. The venue changed, the guest list revisions, it's all in place. Gregory gave a soft, approving smile and pressed a kiss to her forehead. You've done well, he murmured. Now let's make sure your mother gets the reception she truly deserves. The ceremony itself unfolded like a dream. Emma and Travis exchanged vows beneath the soaring arches of the cathedral, the grandeur of the setting only rivaled by the sincerity in their eyes. As Gregory walked his daughter down the aisle, his gaze swept across the pews and caught sight of Margaret dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Tears, no doubt. But now he saw them for what they really were, just another act in a long-running performance. The reception was set in motion at the newly opened Monarch Hotel, a gleaming symbol of modern luxury owned by one of Gregory's most trusted allies. As guests poured into the opulent grand ballroom, they were blissfully unaware of the enhanced security systems or the extra staff members who didn't quite belong to the regular hotel team. When the time came for the traditional father-daughter dance, Gregory took Emma's hand and guided her onto the polished floor. They glided effortlessly to the smooth tones of Sinatra's "The Way You Look Tonight." As they swayed in perfect rhythm, Emma leaned in and whispered, "I'm sorry for what's about to happen, Dad." He gave her hand a gentle squeeze, silently signaling that he was ready. Then came Margaret. With a champagne flute in hand, she made her way to the microphone, her cue. The music faded, the murmurs of the room died down, and the clinking of a silver spoon against glass echoed like a bell signaling an incoming storm. The room fell silent as every head turned to the bride's mother. "Before we continue celebrating," Margaret began, her voice smooth and commanding, "there's something I believe everyone should hear about my husband." Just as she spoke, the ballroom's electronic locks clicked softly into place. Security staff, previously blending into the background, subtly took their positions at every exit. They stood with practiced ease, watchful, ready. "My husband, Gregory Hale, has always thrived on secrets," she continued, her smile strained with a mix of vindication and venom. "But today the curtain falls." That's when the lights dimmed, not enough to alarm, just enough to shift the atmosphere, then brightened again to reveal Carter Langston standing at her side, a thick manila envelope clutched in his hand. "For years this man has twisted the law to his will," Carter declared, holding the envelope high like a verdict waiting to be read. "And as someone sworn to do no harm. I can't just stay silent," Carter said, his voice swelling with self-righteous purpose. "I'd choose your words carefully," Gregory interjected calmly, yet firmly, steering Emma back to her seat with a gentle but unmistakable insistence. "Especially when you're standing in a room full of very important witnesses." For the first time that evening, Margaret's expression faltered. A trace of confusion crossed her face. This wasn't how she had imagined the moment. In her version, by now, the FBI would have stormed through the ballroom doors. Special Agent Langston, Carter's brother, had assured them the raid would coincide perfectly with their dramatic reveal. Gregory turned to Carter, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Waiting on someone, Doctor? Could they be running behind schedule?" He strolled with deliberate ease toward the center of the ballroom, the calm in his demeanor only adding to the tension in the room. 6 months earlier, Gregory had begun noticing subtle shifts in Margaret's behavior. At first, it had been easy to brush them off. Missed dinners, vague excuses, sudden changes in her phone passwords. Whispers behind closed doors. The sort of signs most would chalk up to a relationship gradually cooling. But Gregory Hale wasn't most people. His instincts were honed from decades of peeling back facades. And he had resources. Discreet, precise, and thorough. The private investigator he'd hired delivered a damning dossier. Images, voice recordings, detailed surveillance logs. Not just proof of infidelity, but of a full-scale plot. Plans to expose his dealings with the Kazarov syndicate. Schemes to schedule the revelation for maximum public fallout. Conversations detailing how Carter's FBI brother would ensure the case exploded into a federal scandal. What they hadn't expected, what they never factored in, was Emma's unwavering loyalty. Or Travis's ambition to align with the power that still held real sway. "You look surprised, Margaret," Gregory said as he turned his gaze squarely on her. "Might be a good time to check your phone. I believe there's some breaking news you'll want to see." With a hand that trembled ever so slightly, Margaret pulled out her phone. Her eyes scanned the screen and the blood drained from her face. The headline glared up at her from the local news feed: FBI special agent arrested in major corruption scandal. Beneath it, a photo showed Carter's brother being escorted in handcuffs, eyes downcast, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. "You can't," Carter began, but Gregory raised a hand, silencing him with practiced authority. "I didn't lift a finger against your brother, Carter. That was all his own doing. Greed has a way of making a man careless. The files Carter's brother stole from the bureau, the ones you both believed would take me down, were tampered with," Gregory said, his voice cool and steady. "The originals, which have now been recovered from his apartment, tell a very different story." He glanced toward Carter, then back to the stunned crowd. "They show clear evidence that he was accepting bribes. And not just any bribes. Money funneled directly from the Kazarov organization to intentionally derail federal investigations." The room fell into a heavy silence as Gregory turned to face the guests, all of whom now sat frozen, wine glasses midair, their attention riveted. "I want to sincerely apologize for this deeply unfortunate disruption to what should be a celebration of my daughter's happiness," he said. "Many of you know me as a man who spent his life confronting corruption. Sometimes, however, that fight doesn't stay in the courtroom. Sometimes, it finds its way into your own home." He nodded toward his security team, who immediately moved in with quiet efficiency, surrounding Margaret and Carter without drawing unnecessary attention. "These precautions were taken because we were made aware of credible threats," Gregory continued, scanning the room calmly. "As it turns out, those threats came from 2 people I trusted the most, my own wife and the man she betrayed me with." Margaret sat motionless, her skin pale as porcelain. "You don't honestly believe you're going to walk away from this?" she managed to whisper, her voice cracking. "Walk away from what exactly?" Gregory asked, fixing her with a cold, clear stare. "From the fact that you and your lover conspired with a compromised federal agent? That you planned to hijack our daughter's wedding to broadcast lies and drag my name through the mud?" He stepped to the center of the ballroom, produced a sleek black remote and pressed a button. Mechanical hums filled the air as projection screens descended from the ceiling. What followed silenced even the murmurs: surveillance footage, crystal clear, showing Margaret and Carter in a hotel suite, laying out their entire plan, from the fabricated charges to how they'd split Gregory's fortune once he was indicted. "Dad," Emma called out softly from her table just on cue. Maybe this isn't the right time." Gregory paused, his expression softening as he looked at her. "You're right," he said, his voice warm again. "This day belongs to you and Travis. Not to this mess." He turned to the security personnel. "Please escort Mrs. Hale and Dr. Langston to the private suite we arranged. We'll handle the rest once the celebration has ended." As Margaret and Carter were guided from the room, Margaret's eyes locked onto Gregory's one final time. Her shock had curdled into rage. "This isn't the end," she hissed, barely audible. Gregory's voice dropped to a whisper as he met her gaze. "No," he said. "It's just the beginning of the end." The band picked up where it left off, the soft melodies filling the tense air. Guests slowly returned to their conversations, though now everything felt slightly off-kilter. Voices quieter, glances more frequent, and smiles more forced than before. Travis approached Gregory with a steady hand and a glass of champagne. "Sir," he said, "everything else is moving forward as planned." Gregory placed a firm hand on his new son-in-law's shoulder and gave it a single, approving clap. "You've handled yourself well, Travis. Your position at the firm is secured." Across the ballroom, Emma sat watching the brief exchange between the 2 men. She raised her glass and took a long, contemplative sip of champagne, her eyes fixed on her father. In that moment, it wasn't clear even to her if she'd chosen wisely, if in this brutal family war loyalty had a price she hadn't yet begun to understand. Beneath the glittering floors of the Monarch Hotel, tucked away in a chamber that had once been a Prohibition-era vault, a very different scene unfolded. The room had been repurposed into a luxurious but discreet meeting space. Its thick stone walls, once meant to protect illicit treasures, now served a new kind of secrecy. Margaret and Carter sat across from Gregory at an ornately carved table, the cool air humming softly overhead. The music from the reception upstairs was faint but persistent, like a heartbeat reminding them of what they had tried to ruin. "You made your daughter's wedding into a circus," Margaret snapped, her voice cracking under the weight of fury and fear. Gregory didn't flinch. He opened a sleek leather portfolio with precision. "You chose the battlefield, Margaret. I just chose to finish the fight." Carter lunged across the table, anger uncontained, but 2 security guards grabbed him mid-motion, forcing him back into his chair. "You're insane," Carter seethed. You think you can just erase us? Careful, doctor, Gregory replied coolly. You no longer have privileges at Mercy General. The hospital board suspended you this morning, pending their review of falsified research reports you submitted for funding. He turned to Margaret, never raising his voice. Your brother, he continued, is likely looking at a 20-year sentence. Every one of your accounts has been frozen. This isn't revenge. It's consequences. Gregory leaned back slightly, the calm in his voice at odds with the devastation he described. Your life as you knew it ended the moment you laid a hand on mine. He slid a crisp stack of documents across the table. Margaret, you'll sign these tonight. The divorce becomes effective immediately. You waive any claim to my assets. In return, you receive a one-time payout of $5 million in the Aspen property. You'll leave the state. You will not attempt to contact Emma again. And if I don't? Margaret whispered, though the tremble in her voice gave her away. Gregory didn't blink. Then I released the full surveillance package to the media. Every video. Every phone call. Every dollar trail. Not just the affair, Gregory said, his voice even, and not just the conspiracy to bring me down. I'm talking about the cocaine, Margaret. The hidden account in the Cayman Islands the IRS hasn't touched. And that art collection you love so much? Half of it's forged, and the other half was acquired under suspicious circumstances. He let that sink in before continuing. Did Carter ever find out about the money you skimmed from the charity? The one meant to help children with cancer. Carter's head snapped toward Margaret, confusion written across every inch of his face. What is he talking about? He asked, voice sharp, panicked. Gregory offered a tight, joyless smile. She didn't tell you? Over the past 5 years, nearly $8 million disappeared from the foundation's accounts. I've been aware for some time. I kept it under wraps, for Emma's sake. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. You're bluffing. Without a word, Gregory pushed a sleek USB drive across the table. It's all here, he said. Bank statements, wire transfers, testimony from your accountant. He was more than willing to cooperate once immunity was on the table. The blood drained from Margaret's face. Any defiance she had left flickered and died. She realized then what she'd refused to see: she had never truly been in control. Gregory turned his gaze on Carter next. And you, doctor, aren't much better off. Your options are limited. You can sign a written confession, admitting to falsified studies and improper medical conduct, resign your license and disappear to a country without an extradition treaty. He paused, letting the alternative hang in the air. Or, you can stay and face prosecution for conspiracy, attempted extortion, and yes, medical malpractice. Medical malpractice? Carter snapped. On what basis? Gregory didn't look away. The Bransfield case. The name alone hit like a slap. Carter's face paled, his eyes darting. Gregory saw it immediately, recognition. Yes, he said softly. I know about the surgery you botched while high. I know about the falsified post-op reports. And the nurse you paid off to keep it buried. Carter sank back into his seat, shoulders heavy with the weight of unraveling illusions. How long, he asked, voice low. How long have you known everything? Long enough, Gregory replied. I suspected the affair from the start. Margaret was never subtle. But the larger web took time. Patience. Precision. He leaned forward, voice quiet but sharp. You thought I was just the prosecutor with something to hide. That I was too compromised to fight back. But you made one fatal mistake. He sat back, gaze cold and unwavering. You underestimated the man who taught others how to hunt wolves. You never stopped to consider, Gregory said quietly, that I might be something far more dangerous than a compromised prosecutor, a man with nothing left to lose but his daughter. Upstairs, the reception played on, almost oblivious. Emma danced in Travis's arms, her gown flowing with each careful step. Her face was a portrait of poised happiness, but behind the smile, her mind was elsewhere. Everything had changed when she uncovered her mother's betrayal. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was a shift in her entire worldview. The black and white morality of her upbringing had cracked, and in its place her father's grim but clear code had taken root. Loyalty above all else. Betrayal is never forgotten. Do you think they'll sign? Travis asked softly as they moved together across the floor. They don't have a choice, Emma replied, her voice calm, almost detached. My father doesn't offer options when it truly matters. Below them, in the belly of the hotel, Margaret picked up the pen with a shaking hand. She signed the divorce papers, each stroke of ink an admission of defeat. You'll regret this, Gregory, she hissed. Maybe not today. But someday. Somehow. I've regretted many things, he replied, gathering the papers into his briefcase. Marrying you. Trusting you. But this moment? This I'll enjoy. When the pen was pushed toward Carter, he shoved it back. I won't sign. That confession is a death sentence. Gregory gave a simple nod. One of his men stepped forward, placing a laptop on the table and opening it to reveal a live video call. An elderly man in hospital garb appeared on screen. Do you recognize him? Gregory asked. Judge Harmon. You're currently treating him for pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Carter's face drained of color. He signed a warrant this morning. A full search of your home and office was conducted while you were standing on that stage. Gregory let the silence hang in the air like a verdict. What they found was thorough. Carter's resistance evaporated. With trembling hands he signed. There's a jet waiting for you at the regional airfield, Gregory said as he stood. You can go wherever you want. But I choose quickly and separately. You've got 1 hour to leave this city. 12 hours to leave the country. As he turned to walk out, Margaret made one final attempt. What about Emma? She asked, her voice sharp with desperation. She deserves the truth. She should know the kind of man her father really is. Gregory paused at the doorway, then looked over his shoulder. She already knows, he said. And she made her choice just like you made yours. Gregory returned to the reception, the music and laughter a stark contrast to the cold precision of what had just transpired. Emma found him almost immediately. Is it done? She asked quietly. He gave a single nod. Yes. They've been taken care of. She exhaled, relief washing over her features, as if a crushing weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. And the evidence? She asked. Gone, he said. Travis made sure of it. His cooperation sealed everything. Emma glanced across the ballroom. Travis was in conversation with several senior partners from Gregory's firm, effortlessly winning them over with his charm and calculated wit. He reminds me of you, she said. That's why I approved, Gregory replied without hesitation. He understands what really matters. And what's that? Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. Family. Loyalty. Power. He took her hands, firm but gentle. The things worth fighting for, he said. The things worth killing for. Together they rejoined the festivities. Father and daughter, bound not just by blood, but by the cold clarity of shared purpose. Around them, guests clinked glasses and complimented the beautiful ceremony. They spoke in soft tones about how devoted Gregory was to his daughter, how elegant the family looked, and how unfortunate it was that Margaret had suddenly fallen ill and had to leave early. Later that night, long after the newlyweds had departed for their honeymoon, Gregory sat alone in his study. A single lamp cast shadows across the room, illuminating the laptop in front of him. On the screen, a private live stream flickered quietly. One of the feeds showed Margaret, alone, boarding a sleek private jet bound for Switzerland. He watched her go, saying nothing. Another feed showed Carter being led across a dimly lit tarmac, flanked by security personnel. His destination, a private flight bound for Dubai. No goodbyes, no resistance, just silent exile. Gregory's phone buzzed. A message from Emma lit up the screen. Thank you. For today. For everything. He set the phone down slowly, poured himself a generous glass of 30-year-old scotch, and lifted it in a quiet toast to no one. The family business would continue, unshaken, undisturbed. And in time, it would pass into the capable hands of Emma and Travis, both of whom had proven their value. They understood the rules now. They had lived the cost of betrayal and the weight of loyalty. The traitors were gone. The threat eliminated. And if new ones rose in the future as they always did, they'd meet the same fate as those before them. Because Gregory Hale didn't forgive. And he never, ever forgot. He closed the laptop, the faint hum of the screen fading into silence. A small smile formed at the corners of his mouth. And so it ended, not with a bang but with a silent, calculated series of moves that dismantled everything built on deceit. Gregory Hale stood at the edge of it all, not as a man broken by betrayal, but as one forged by it. His enemies scattered, their legacies in ruins. The people he trusted most had tried to bring him down, and he had responded not with rage, but with ruthless precision. Above him the world moved on, Emma's wedding, the guests, the music, the smiling photographs. To them it had been a beautiful day. To Gregory it had been something far more sacred. A reckoning. Now, with Emma and Travis by his side, the future lay open, dangerous still, but his to shape. He knew there would be others. There always were. But he also knew they'd underestimate him, just like Margaret and Carter had. just like everyone always did. And when they came, he'd be ready. Because for Gregory Hale, family wasn't just blood. It was legacy. It was power. And it was war. He raised his glass one final time. To loyalty. To survival. To the ones who never see it coming. The end.